Commander Kim Tae-ho crouched behind a twisted metal beam, his rifle steady in his hands. The abandoned mining facility on Kepler 442b stretched out before him like a maze of rust and shadows. 3 days of careful observation had taught him every corner of this place. The Star Dominion thought they were clever, hiding their new weapon here on this forgotten world. They were wrong. "Ghost Team, report," Tae-ho whispered into his comm device. The small earpiece crackled with quiet responses. "Demolitions in position," came the voice of Park Ji-won. Somewhere in the darkness below, his teammate was placing charges on the weapon's power core. Ji-won had been with Tae-ho for 5 years. The man could blow up a battleship with a handful of spare parts. "Communications array located," reported Lee Dobbin from her perch high in the facility's control tower. "Ready to download their files and get out of here." Tae-ho smiled. Daebin was the youngest member of his team, but she had already proven herself on a dozen missions. Her fingers could dance across alien computer systems like a pianist playing her favorite song. The Star Dominion had ruled this part of the galaxy for 300 years. 7 different alien species had joined together to create an empire that stretched across hundreds of worlds. They saw humans as nothing more than primitive newcomers who had stumbled into space by accident. The Dominion allowed human colonies to exist only because humans were useful for dangerous jobs like mining and construction work. But humans had been watching and learning. They had been preparing. Tae-ho checked his watch. In 20 minutes, their extraction ship would arrive. Captain Yoon Haijin would pilot the stealth vessel down through the planet's atmosphere and pick up the team. By then, they needed to have everything they came for. The weapon platform hidden in this facility could destroy entire fleets. The Dominion planned to use it to crush human resistance once and for all. Earth's military leaders needed to know exactly how it worked and where its weaknesses were. "Movement on the north side?" Dobbin's voice was tense. 3 patrol vehicles approaching fast. Tae-ho cursed silently. They had been so careful. No one should have known they were here. "How long until the download is complete?" he asked. 8 minutes, Dobbin replied. "Ji-won, status on those charges?" 5 more minutes, boss. "This thing is bigger than we thought." Tae-ho made his decision quickly. "Continue the mission. I'll buy you time." He moved through the facility like a ghost, using every piece of cover available. The Dominion guards were good, but they had never faced a human Navy SEAL in his element. Their armor was strong and their weapons were powerful, but they moved like beings who had never known real danger. The first patrol entered through the main entrance. Tae-ho counted 12 soldiers, all wearing the dark blue uniforms of Dominion security forces. Their leader was a tall, thin alien with gray skin and 4 arms. The others were a mix of different species, but all heavily armed. Tae-ho waited until they spread out, then struck. His first shot dropped the rear guard before the alien could even scream. The second shot hit their communications specialist, cutting off their link to reinforcements. The remaining 10 soldiers spun around, trying to find their attacker in the maze of machinery and shadows. "Human contact," their leader shouted in the common trade language. "Sector 7. Close all exits." But Tae-ho was already moving. He rolled behind a massive generator, came up firing, and dropped 2 more guards. The aliens returned fire, their energy weapons lighting up the darkness with deadly bolts of blue light. 4 minutes, Ji-won reported through the comm. Tae-ho changed position again. The aliens were starting to work together, using proper tactics to corner him. These were not the lazy garrison troops he had expected. Someone had sent real soldiers to guard this place. An energy bolt sizzled past his ear, so close he could smell the burned air. Tae-ho dove left, rolled, and came up behind a new piece of cover. He could see 3 aliens moving to flank his position, while their leader coordinated the attack. His rifle barked twice more. 2 aliens fell, but the others were getting closer. Tae-ho pulled a grenade from his belt, counted to 3, and threw it toward the main group. The explosion shook the entire facility, and he heard alien voices crying out in pain and confusion. "Download complete," Dobbin announced. "Getting out of here now." "Charges set," Ji-won added. "Ready for pickup," but more vehicles were arriving outside. Tae-ho could hear the whine of engines and the sound of marching feet. "A lot of marching feet. Change of plans," he said into his comm. "Extraction point Beta, move now. What about you?" Dobbin asked. "I'll catch up, go." Tae-ho knew he was lying, but his team needed to escape. The information they had gathered was too important to lose. If the Dominion's new weapon became operational, it could end humanity's hopes of freedom forever. He moved toward the facility's main power junction. If he could overload the system, the resulting explosion would destroy everything the Dominion had built here. It would also alert every enemy ship in the system, but his team would have a few extra minutes to reach their extraction point. The junction was heavily guarded now. At least 20 alien soldiers surrounded the critical systems, all watching for him. Their leader, a massive reptilian creature with scales like armor, stood in the center giving orders. Tae-ho counted his remaining ammunition. 12 shots left in his rifle, plus 2 grenades and his sidearm. Not enough to fight through 20 enemies, but maybe enough to complete the mission. He took careful aim at a coolant pipe above the power junction. If he could rupture it at just the right angle, the escaping gas would create a chain reaction. The aliens would have maybe 10 seconds to evacuate before everything went critical. His shot was perfect. The pipe split open, spraying freezing coolant across the power systems. Sparks flew as circuits overloaded. The alien soldiers looked up in confusion just as every warning alarm in the facility began screaming. The reptilian leader pointed directly at Tae-ho's hiding spot. "There, kill him! Energy weapons fired from all directions." Tae-ho felt one bolt burn across his shoulder, another sear the air next to his head. He emptied his rifle at the advancing aliens, dropping 3 more before his ammunition ran out. The facility shook as the power systems began to fail. Emergency lights flickered on and off. In the distance, Tae-ho could hear the sound of his extraction ship lifting off. Ji-won and Da-bin had made it out safely. His mission was complete. The aliens surrounded him as he dropped his empty rifle. The reptilian leader approached slowly, his weapon trained on Tae-ho's chest. "Surrender, human," the alien commanded. "You are defeated." Tae-ho looked up at his captor and smiled. Behind the alien, he could see the weapon platform beginning to shut down as its power failed. Computer screens went dark. "Critical systems offline." "No," Tae-ho said quietly. "You are." The facility exploded around them as the overloaded power core finally gave up. When the smoke cleared, Kim Tae-ho was unconscious but alive. The weapon platform was nothing but twisted metal and dead circuits. The Star Dominion had captured a human Navy SEAL, but they had lost something far more valuable. They just did not know it yet. 3 days later, Kim Tae-ho stood in chains before the greatest courthouse in the Star Dominion. The Grand Tribunal on Dominion Prime was a massive building that could be seen from orbit. Its crystal walls stretched up into the clouds, and inside 7 judges sat on thrones that represented the 7 species of the Dominion. Tae-ho's uniform was torn and dirty. His left shoulder was wrapped in bandages where the energy bolt had burned him. His face showed the marks of 3 days of questioning and beatings, but his back was straight and his eyes were clear. He looked like a soldier, not a prisoner. The reptilian creature who had captured him stood nearby. General Vorthak was his name, and he served as the Dominion's supreme chancellor. His scales were dark green, almost black, and his eyes were like yellow fire. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the enormous courtroom. "Citizens of the Star Dominion," Vorthak began, "today we witness the trial of a human terrorist who dared to attack our peaceful facilities. The trial was being broadcast live across 847 star systems. 12 billion beings watched from their homes, their ships, and their workplaces. On every Dominion world, the message was the same. See how weak these humans really are." But the broadcast reached human worlds too. On Earth, Admiral Song Min-ho watched from his command center deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. His fists were clenched as he saw his best soldiers standing in alien chains. "Get me a direct line to the Dominion embassy," Min-ho ordered his aide, "and prep the entire fleet for emergency deployment." On the colony world of New Seoul, Captain Yoon Hae-jin sat in a crowded bar with other human military officers. They had all served with Tae-ho at one time or another. As they watched their friend being put on display like some kind of zoo animal, their anger grew. 3 days maximum burn to reach Dominion Prime," whispered Major Choi Woo-bin. "We could have half the fleet there before they even know we are coming." "Stand down," Hae-jin replied, but his voice was tight with rage. "We have orders to wait." Back in the courtroom, the 7 judges took turns speaking. Each one represented a different alien species, and each one had something cruel to say about humanity. The first judge was a tall, pale being with no hair and large black eyes. Her species had joined the Dominion 200 years ago. Humans are a young race, she declared. They do not understand the proper order of things. This creature before us proves their primitive nature. The second judge looked like a giant insect with 4 legs and sharp claws for hands. Humans use crude weapons and simple tactics, he clicked in his strange language. The translation came through speakers around the courtroom. They are no threat to civilized beings. One by one, the judges made their speeches. They talked about human weakness, human stupidity, and human inferiority. They showed pictures of the destroyed weapon platform and called it a terrorist attack on innocent civilians. But they made a mistake. They let Tejo speak. "You call me a terrorist," Tejo said when they finally gave him a chance to respond. His voice was calm and strong despite his injuries. "You built a weapon designed to kill entire populations and you call me the terrorist." General Vorthak laughed. "Humans always try to justify their crimes. Your species cannot accept that you are inferior." "Inferior," Tejo repeated. He looked directly at the camera that was broadcasting to billions of viewers. "You needed 20 soldiers and heavy weapons to capture one human with a rifle. You call that superior?" The judges tried to silence him, but the damage was done. Across human space, those words reached every military base, every colony, every ship in the void. You needed 20 soldiers and heavy weapons to capture one human with a rifle. On Mars Station, Colonel Bei Su-jin was watching with her entire unit. They were combat engineers, the people who built fortifications and destroyed enemy positions. As they listened to Tejo's words, they began making calculations. How many Dominion soldiers would it take to stop a full human battalion? How many to stop a division? How many to stop an army that was truly angry? The numbers did not look good for the Dominion. Dr. Im Yu-jin was watching from her research facility on Europa. She was a computer specialist who had spent years studying Dominion technology. As the trial continued, she began typing rapidly on her keyboard. If the Dominion wanted to broadcast this trial to every world in their empire, she would make sure they got more than they bargained for. The trial went on for hours. The judges read a long list of charges against Tejo: terrorism, murder, destruction of government property, and resisting arrest. Each charge carried a death sentence under Dominion law. But the worst part came when they began to mock human military traditions. The insect-like judge showed pictures of human soldiers saluting their fallen comrades. "Look at these silly rituals," he laughed. "Humans pretend their dead warriors go to some magical place of honor. How primitive." The pale judge displayed images of military funerals on Earth. They waste time and resources mourning their failures. A properly civilized species would simply dispose of the bodies efficiently. General Vorthak saved his cruelest words for last. "This human claims to be a soldier, but look at him. He is small, weak, and alone. His own people have abandoned him here. They will not even try to rescue him because they know he is worthless." On Earth, Admiral Minho watched his communications board light up with incoming messages. Every human commander in the galaxy was requesting permission to attack. Every human fleet was asking for orders to advance. Every human soldier wanted to prove the Dominion wrong about their worthlessness. But the orders from Earth's government were clear. Do nothing that might start a war. Try to negotiate. Offer concessions. Save Tejo through diplomacy. Captain Yoon Haijin received those same orders. He was told to contact the Dominion and offer them anything they wanted in exchange for his friend's life. Technology, territory, resources, anything. So he tried. Haijin sent message after message to Dominion officials, offering them mining rights to 3 different star systems, if they would just let Tejo go home. The response came back quickly. "Your pathetic offers prove human weakness," General Vorthak replied. "We do not negotiate with inferior species." The trial reached its conclusion as the judges voted on Tejo's sentence. Each of the 7 species cast their vote, and each vote was the same: death by molecular dissolution. The human terrorist will be executed tomorrow at noon. "Dominion prime time," Vorthak announced to the watching galaxy. His death will serve as an example to all who would challenge the natural order. But as the trial ended, something was happening across human space that the Dominion did not see. In military bases and civilian centers, on ships and space stations, humans were gathering around their communication systems. They were not just watching anymore. They were planning. Professor Jang So-young sat in her office on Earth. surrounded by star charts and military manuals. She was not a soldier, but she had been married to one. Her husband had died fighting pirates in the Outer Rim, and she knew what military honor meant to people like Taeho. She also knew something the Dominion had forgotten. Humans did not fight for territory or resources or political power. They fought for each other. They fought for the memory of those who had fallen. They fought because someone they respected had been disrespected. The Dominion thought they were showing their strength by putting Taeho on trial. What they were really doing was making a terrible mistake. They were about to learn the difference between fear and fury. The next day, Dominion Prime's main plaza was filled with thousands of alien spectators. They had come to watch the execution of the human terrorist. Giant screens showed the event to billions more across the galaxy. The molecular dissolution chamber stood in the center of the plaza like a glass coffin, filled with swirling energy. Kim Taeho was brought out in chains, flanked by 20 Dominion guards. His uniform had been replaced with a simple gray prisoner's outfit, but he still walked like a soldier. His head was high, his steps were steady, and his eyes showed no fear. General Vorthak stood on a platform overlooking the scene. His yellow eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he spoke to the cameras. Today the Star Dominion demonstrates what happens to those who challenge our authority. Let all humans witness the fate of their so-called hero. On Earth, Admiral Song Min-ho sat in his command center watching the broadcast. Around him, his staff worked frantically at their stations. The entire human fleet was ready to launch, but they were still 3 days away from Dominion Prime at maximum burn. Too far to help their captured comrade. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving surrender offers from 17 different human colonies. They're trying to trade themselves for Commander Taeho's life." Minho's face was like stone. "Tell them to maintain their positions. No one surrenders. Not today." On New Seoul, Captain Yoon Hae-jin watched from the military headquarters with hundreds of other officers. The room was completely silent except for the sound of the broadcast. Every human in the galaxy seemed to be watching this moment. The execution device was a Dominion invention designed to cause maximum pain. Instead of killing quickly, it would slowly break apart every molecule in the victim's body over the course of 20 to 30 minutes. The victim would remain conscious almost until the very end. "This is what we do to terrorists," Vorthak announced as Taeho was strapped into the chamber. "Let his screams teach you the price of defying us." But Taeho did not scream. As the molecular dissolution began, waves of energy washed over his body. The pain must have been unimaginable, but Taeho kept his eyes focused on the main camera. He stared directly into the lens as if he was looking at every human watching across the galaxy. 5 minutes passed. The energy waves grew stronger. Taeho's body began to shimmer as the molecular bonds started to weaken. But still he did not cry out. On Mars Station, Colonel Bae Soo-jin watched with her combat engineers. They had all seen soldiers die before, but never like this. Never with such dignity in the face of such cruelty. "Look at him," whispered one of her sergeants. 20 minutes of the worst torture in the galaxy and he won't give them the satisfaction. 10 minutes passed. The Dominion crowd began to murmur. They had expected screaming, begging, and broken sobbing. Instead, they saw a human who refused to break. Dr. Im Yoo-jin sat in her laboratory on Europa, her fingers dancing across multiple keyboards. While the galaxy watched the execution, she was busy with her own work. Every second of this broadcast was being recorded and analyzed. Every Dominion official, every guard, every spectator was being identified and cataloged. The Dominion wanted to make an example. She would make sure they got one they would never forget. 15 minutes passed. Taeho's uniform began to fade as the molecules came apart, but his posture remained straight. His eyes never left the camera. Some of the alien spectators began to look uncomfortable. This was not the display of human weakness they had come to see. General Vorthak stepped closer to the chamber. "Beg, human," he commanded. "Ask for mercy and we might make it quick." Taeho turned his head slightly to look at the alien general. His voice was weak now, but still clear. "Go to hell." 20 minutes passed. The molecular dissolution was nearly complete. Taeho's body was more energy than matter now, held together only by the machine's field generators. But somehow he was still conscious, still staring at the camera with eyes full of determination rather than pain. As the final moments approached, Taeho did something that shocked everyone watching. He raised his right hand, despite the energy field trying to tear it apart, and made a simple gesture. 3 fingers extended, then closed into a fist. Every human soldier in the galaxy recognized the signal. It was an old military code that meant mission continues. It meant that even though one soldier was falling, the fight would go on. On Earth, Professor Zhang So-young was watching with her research team. As she saw Taeho's final signal, she turned to her computers and began typing rapidly. "Send the activation codes," she ordered. All of them. Every hidden asset, every sleeper agent, every emergency protocol. Send them now. The molecular dissolution chamber reached its final stage. Taeho's body became pure energy for one last moment, and then he was gone. The machine powered down with a satisfied hum. General Vorthak raised his arms in victory. "So dies the human resistance," he announced to the cheering crowd. "Let this be a lesson to all who would challenge the Star Dominion." But something was wrong. The cheering stopped as alien officials began receiving urgent messages on their communication devices. Reports were coming in from across Dominion space. Something was happening on the human worlds. Lieutenant Colonel Bae Soo-jin had left Mars Station with her entire unit. They had commandeered a transport ship and were heading for the nearest Dominion garrison. Her message to Mars Command was simple. Going to show them what human terrorism really looks like. On the mining world of Vega Prime, Foreman Na Dong-hyun was walking away from his shift when he received Professor Zhang's activation codes. He looked around at his 3,000 miners, all human, all watching the same broadcast feeds. "Boys," he said quietly, "it's time to go to work." Captain Kang Min-soo was commanding a small exploration vessel near the outer rim when he saw Taeho die. His ship carried only 30 crew members and had no weapons bigger than personal sidearms. But there was a Dominion battlecruiser in the same system, and it had just become a target. Dr. Im Yu-jin finished uploading her virus programs into the Dominion communication network. Every insult, every moment of torture, every second of Taeho's execution had been carefully edited and prepared. Now it would be broadcast on every Dominion channel across their empire, but with new additions. Pictures of human colonies being attacked, records of Dominion war crimes, evidence of corruption and cruelty that the alien government had tried to hide. The Dominion had wanted to show their strength. Instead, they had shown their true nature to the galaxy. On New Seoul, Captain Yoon Hae-jin stood up from his chair as the execution ended. Around him, hundreds of human officers were doing the same thing. They were not waiting for orders from Earth anymore. They were not asking permission. They were going to war. General Vorthak looked out at the crowd of alien spectators, expecting to see satisfaction and fear. Instead, he saw confusion and growing alarm. His communication device was buzzing with incoming reports, but he ignored them. The human was dead. The example had been made. What could possibly go wrong now? He was about to find out. The first uprising began exactly 3 minutes after Kim Taeho died. On Arcturus 7, Lieutenant Colonel Bae Soo-jin had been imprisoned for 6 months. She and 47 other human soldiers had been captured during a border skirmish and thrown into a Dominion military prison. The aliens kept them alive as examples of human failure, but Soo-jin had not been idle during her imprisonment. She had memorized every guard rotation, every weakness in the prison's design, every piece of equipment that could be turned into a weapon. She had been waiting for the right moment to act. Taeho's execution was that moment. The prison guards were all watching the broadcast on their personal devices, laughing at the humans' suffering. They did not notice Soo-jin working on the electronic lock of her cell until it was too late. Years of engineering training had taught her how circuits worked, even alien ones. The lock clicked open just as Taeho made his final hand signal. Soo-jin stepped into the corridor and began freeing her fellow prisoners. Within minutes, 48 human soldiers were loose in a Dominion facility designed to hold them. The aliens had better weapons and armor, but they had never fought humans who had nothing left to lose. Soo-jin's team moved through the prison like ghosts, using maintenance shafts and service tunnels that their larger alien captors could not fit through. The first guard died without making a sound. Soo-jin broke his neck with her bare hands and took his weapon. The second guard managed to shout a warning before Major Park Jin-woo silenced him permanently. By then it was too late for the others. Within 20 minutes, the human prisoners controlled the entire facility. They had captured the prison's communication center, its weapon storage, and most importantly, its connection to the planetary defense grid. This is Lieutenant Colonel Bae Soo-jin, Calling any human forces in the Arcturus system, she broadcast on all frequencies. The prison has been liberated, sending you access codes to the planetary defense network now. 3 hours later, every Dominion ship in orbit around Arcturus 7 was destroyed by their own defense platforms, now under human control. But Sujin's prison break was just the beginning. On New Sol, the power grid failed at exactly the same time. Engineer Choi Woo-bin had been working on the planet's main energy distribution center for 3 years. The Dominion administrators thought he was just another human laborer, grateful for steady work and a place to live. They had no idea he was a former military officer who had been placed there specifically to wait for this day. As Taeho's execution ended, Woo-bin walked calmly to his control station and entered a series of codes that Professor Jang So-young had sent him months earlier. Every power line feeding the massive Dominion administrative complex suddenly went dead. Elevators stopped between floors. Security systems went offline. Climate control failed. Emergency lighting flickered and died. Within minutes, 8,000 alien bureaucrats were trapped in a building that had become their tomb. But Woo-bin was not finished. He activated the secondary power grid, the one the Dominion had never known about. Hidden throughout New Sol were military installations that human colonists had built in secret. Weapon depots, communication centers, and vehicle storage facilities that had been waiting years for activation. The lights came back on in the human sections of the city. Air raid sirens began to wail, and from hidden bunkers across the planet, human militia forces emerged with equipment that was definitely not standard civilian issue. Colonel Kim Min-jun had been New Sol's civil defense coordinator for the past 5 years. The Dominion thought his job was organizing fire drills and medical emergency responses. In reality, he commanded 3,000 well-trained human soldiers who had been preparing for this moment since the day the colony was founded. All units, this is command. Min-jun broadcast on the military frequencies that the Dominion had never detected. Operation Righteous Fury is now active. You know your targets. Within 1 hour, every Dominion facility on New Sol was under attack. The aliens had never imagined that their peaceful human subjects were actually a military force in disguise. Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy. On Europa, Dr. Im Yu-jin had done more than just hack the Dominion communication network. She had spent years studying their computer systems, learning their weaknesses, and preparing viruses that would turn their own technology against them. As Taeho died, she released those viruses into every major Dominion network simultaneously. Space traffic control systems began directing alien ships into collision courses. Banking networks transferred the contents of Dominion treasury accounts to human resistance groups. Military communication networks started broadcasting human battle songs instead of official orders. Most devastating of all, the viruses began displaying Dr. Im's specially prepared video files on every screen in Dominion space. The execution of Kim Taeho was shown again and again, but now it was accompanied by footage that the Dominion had tried to hide. Mass graves on worlds that had resisted their rule, prison camps where captured humans were worked to death, scientific experiments performed on living subjects. The galaxy saw the true face of the Star Dominion, and many did not like what they saw. On the mining world of Vega Prime, Foreman Dong-hyun finished his shift and walked to the center of the human worker camp. 3,000 miners gathered around him, all of them watching Taeho's execution on their portable devices. "Brothers and sisters," Dong-hyun said quietly, "they just murdered our finest soldier on live broadcast for the entertainment of our enemies. I think it's time we showed them what 3,000 angry humans can do with mining equipment." The Dominion garrison on Vega Prime consisted of 200 alien soldiers equipped with modern military weapons. They were expecting to spend a quiet evening celebrating the humans' execution. Instead, they found themselves under attack by mining vehicles that had been converted into tanks, drilling equipment that had become artillery, and explosives that were normally used to break apart asteroids, but worked just as well on enemy fortifications. Dong-hyun's miners had been practicing this assault for months, disguising their preparations as routine maintenance and safety drills. The alien garrison never knew what hit them. By morning, the humans controlled the entire planet and its valuable mineral resources. More importantly, they had captured a Dominion communication relay that served 17 different star systems. In the outer rim, Captain Kang Min-soo made a decision that his crew would remember for the rest of their lives. His exploration ship New Horizon was outgunned 1,000 to 1 by the Dominion battle cruiser, Eternal Glory. But Min-soo had something the aliens did not understand. He had nothing left to lose, all hands. "This is the captain," Min-soo announced over the ship's intercom. "We just watched them torture and murder Commander Taeho for 23 minutes. I'm going to ram that battlecruiser. Anyone who wants to leave can take the escape pods now." Nobody left. The New Horizon accelerated toward the massive alien warship at full burn. The Dominion crew had plenty of time to see them coming, plenty of time to fire their weapons, plenty of time to realize that the small human ship was not going to change course. Min-soo's ship struck the battlecruiser's main reactor at 90% of light speed. The explosion could be seen from 3 different star systems, but perhaps the most important awakening happened on Earth itself, in the underground command center where Admiral Song Min-ho had been watching his best soldier die. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving activation confirmations from sleeper agents across Dominion space. Every hidden asset we've placed in the last 10 years is going active simultaneously." Min-ho nodded grimly. Professor Jang So-young's contingency plan was working exactly as designed. For years, humans had been infiltrating Dominion society at every level. Janitors who were actually intelligence agents, mechanics who were really saboteurs, civilian contractors who carried military training and hidden equipment. The Dominion had never suspected that their human workers were really an army in disguise. "What are your orders, sir?" the communications officer asked. Min-ho looked at the tactical display showing human uprisings beginning across hundreds of worlds. The Dominion had wanted to make an example of Kim Taeho. Instead, they had started the largest coordinated rebellion in galactic history. "Send a message to all human forces," Min-ho ordered. "Operation Righteous Fury is approved for all sectors. Show them what happens when they murder our people for entertainment." The awakening had begun, and it was spreading faster than the Dominion could possibly respond. General Vorthak was still celebrating his victory when the reports began coming in. "Sir," his aide approached nervously, "we're receiving distress calls from Arcturus 7. The human prisoners have somehow escaped and taken control of the planetary defense grid." Vorthak waved dismissively. "A minor incident. Send a security team to handle it." "Sir, they've also taken control of the orbital platforms. 3 of our destroyers have been destroyed." The general's celebration stopped. He turned to stare at his aide, yellow eyes growing brighter with anger. "What did you say?" More reports flooded in. New Sol had gone dark except for massive explosions visible from orbit. Vega Prime was no longer responding to communications. The Outer Rim Patrol Fleet had lost contact with the battle cruiser, Eternal Glory. "How many incidents are we dealing with?" Vorthak demanded. His aide's hands were shaking as he read from his data pad. 47 worlds reporting human uprisings, sir. The number is growing every minute. But the real chaos was just beginning. At Kepler Station, the largest trade hub in Dominion space, human merchant Captain Lee Sang-woo was loading cargo when he received the activation codes. His ship Golden Wind carried medical supplies to colonies throughout the sector. The Dominion authorities saw him as a harmless civilian who paid his taxes and caused no trouble. They had no idea that his cargo holds contained enough military-grade explosives to level a city block. Sang-woo's target was the station's main computer core, the central system that controlled trade routes for 300 worlds. He walked calmly through the busy corridors, nodding politely to the alien security guards who had grown used to seeing him over the years. The bomb he left behind looked like a standard medical supply container. By the time anyone realized what it really was, Sang-woo was already undocking his ship and heading for open space. The explosion cut Kepler Station in half. The computer core was completely destroyed, along with all the trade data for the sector. More importantly, the blast severed the main communication relay that connected 57 different star systems. Within minutes, entire regions of Dominion space went silent. On the industrial world of Titan Prime, mechanic Yu Jimin had been working on alien vehicles and equipment for 8 years. The Dominion valued human technical skills, never realizing that every system Jimin repaired, he also learned how to sabotage. As Taeho's execution ended, Jimin activated hidden programs he had installed in hundreds of machines across the planet. Dominion military vehicles suddenly stopped working. Power plants shut down without warning. Weapon systems turned on their operators. But Jimin's masterpiece was the planetary shield generator, the massive device that protected Titan Prime from asteroid impacts and enemy attacks. He had been the lead technician on its maintenance team for 3 years. The shield generator exploded exactly 20 minutes after Taeho died, taking half the planet's capital city with it. Similar scenes were happening everywhere. On Research Station Echo 7, scientist Park Hyo-jin had been studying Dominion weapons technology for the past 4 years. Her real job was learning how to turn that technology against its creators. She released a computer virus into the station's main network that caused every experimental weapon to activate simultaneously. The resulting explosions could be seen from 2 light-years away. Dr. Im Yoo-jin, working from her laboratory on Europa, was coordinating the cyber attacks across the entire galaxy. Her viruses had infiltrated every major Dominion computer system, and now they were all activating at once. Bank accounts were emptied. Military orders were scrambled. Navigation systems began directing ships into dangerous areas of space. Perhaps most damaging of all, the Dominion's massive propaganda network began broadcasting the truth about their occupation of human worlds. Citizens across the galaxy learned that humans were not willing subjects of the Dominion, but conquered peoples fighting for their freedom. They saw footage of Dominion soldiers attacking civilian colonies. They watched recordings of alien officials discussing humans as if they were livestock. Many alien species had their own grievances against the Dominion. Seeing humanity's courage inspired them to act on their anger. On Rigel 4, the native population had been oppressed by Dominion rule for 50 years. When they saw humans fighting back against impossible odds, they decided to join the rebellion. Within hours, Rigel's 3 major cities were in flames as the natives drove out their occupiers. The Xerion species had lost their homeworld to Dominion development projects 20 years earlier. Inspired by human resistance, they began attacking Dominion shipping lanes throughout their former territory. Even some species within the Dominion itself began to question their allegiance. The youngest member race, who had joined only 30 years ago, suddenly announced that they were withdrawing from the alliance and declaring neutrality. General Vorthak watched in horror as his empire began to collapse around him. Reports were coming in faster than his staff could process them. Hundreds of worlds were in rebellion. Entire fleets had gone missing. Communication networks were failing across multiple sectors. "How is this possible?" he roared at his commanders. "They're just humans. We killed their leader. They should be surrendering." His intelligence chief, a pale alien with 4 arms and no visible eyes, approached cautiously. "Sir, it appears that humans have been infiltrating our society for years. Every human worker, every human contractor, every human service provider was actually a potential military asset. You're telling me we've been employing an army of spies for a decade?" "It appears so, sir." Vorthak's rage was interrupted by another urgent report. "Sir, the human fleet has left Earth. Admiral Song Minho is leading every warship they have toward Dominion Prime." "How long until they arrive?" 2 days, sir." "Then we have 2 days to crush these rebellions and restore order," Vorthak snarled. "Deploy the reserve fleets. Activate all military assets. Show these humans what real power looks like." But it was already too late. The Dominion's reserve fleets were scattered across the galaxy, trying to deal with hundreds of separate uprisings. Their communication networks were compromised. Their supply lines were being attacked by human saboteurs and alien rebels alike. Most critically, their reputation as an unstoppable force was shattered. For 300 years, the Dominion had maintained control through fear and the belief that resistance was hopeless. Now the galaxy was watching humans prove that belief wrong. On the prison world of Sigma-6, 10,000 human captives overwhelmed their guards and seized control of the entire facility. They found weapons hidden by previous prisoners and turned the planet into a fortress. In the asteroid belt of the Centauri system, human miners used their industrial equipment to destroy a Dominion patrol squadron. Ships designed to harvest minerals proved equally effective at tearing apart enemy vessels. Captain Yoon Hae-jin, finally freed from his orders to wait for diplomacy, led a squadron of human fighters against a Dominion space station. His forces were outnumbered 10 to 1, but they fought with a fury that the aliens had never encountered before. "This is for Tae-ho," Hae-jin transmitted as his ships dove into the enemy formation. His squadron was destroyed, but they took the space station with them. Across the galaxy, similar acts of sacrifice and courage were destroying the Dominion's ability to govern. Every human death inspired 10 more acts of rebellion. Every successful attack encouraged alien species to join the fight. Professor Yang So-young, monitoring the situation from her office on Earth, realized that they had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. A coordinated uprising spanning hundreds of worlds, all triggered by the martyrdom of a single soldier. The Dominion had wanted to make Kim Tae-ho an example of human weakness. Instead, they had turned him into a symbol of human strength that was inspiring the entire galaxy to fight for freedom. General Vorthak's empire was not just losing territory, it was losing the fear that had kept it in power for 3 centuries, and once that fear was gone, there would be no getting it back. Exactly 20 minutes after Kim Tae-ho's execution ended, General Vorthak received a message that changed everything. "Sir," his communications officer reported, voice shaking with disbelief. "We've lost contact with the Omega sector. All 15 star systems have gone dark." "Define gone dark," Vorthak demanded. "No communications, no tax revenues, no military reports. It's as if they've simply ceased to exist as part of the Dominion." Vorthak stared at the tactical display showing his empire. Red warning lights were appearing faster than his computer systems could process them. Each light represented a world in rebellion, a fleet destroyed, or a facility captured by human forces. In 20 minutes, 300 years of Dominion rule had begun to crumble. "Sir, urgent message from the Kepler sector," another aide interrupted. "Captain Lee Sang-woo has destroyed the main trade hub. The entire sector's economy has collapsed." "Who is Captain Lee Sang-woo?" Vorthak roared. "A human merchant, sir. We thought he was a civilian." The truth was finally becoming clear. The Dominion had not been ruling over peaceful human colonies. They had been sitting on top of a carefully planned military operation that had taken years to prepare. Colonel Oh Jung-min was leading the assault on Dominion Prime itself. His special forces team had been hiding on the planet for 6 months, disguised as maintenance workers in the capital city. As Tae-ho died, they emerged from their hiding places with weapons that definitely did not belong to janitors and repair technicians. Their first target was the Planetary Defense Control Center. The building was heavily guarded, but the guards were not expecting an attack from inside their own facility. Jung-min's team had been mapping every corridor, every security system, every weakness for months. The assault began with explosions in the building's lower levels. As Dominion security forces rushed to respond, they found themselves fighting humans who knew the building better than they did. Jung-min's soldiers used service tunnels and maintenance shafts to strike from unexpected angles. Within 1 hour, the humans controlled the defense center and had shut down all orbital weapons protecting the capital. The path was clear for Admiral Song Min-ho's fleet when it arrived, but Jung-min was not finished. His secondary objective was the Dominion's Central Communication Array, the massive facility that coordinated messages across 800 worlds. If he could capture it, human forces would be able to communicate freely while the Dominion remained scattered and confused. The communication array was defended by the elite Dominion Guard, the best soldiers in their military. These were not the lazy garrison troops that had failed elsewhere. These aliens had trained for decades and never known defeat. They were about to learn what happened when elite soldiers fought humans who had absolutely nothing to lose. Jung-min's assault team numbered only 30 soldiers, but they moved through the facility like ghosts. They had studied Dominion military tactics for years and knew exactly how their enemies would respond to each attack. The battle lasted 4 hours and left no Dominion survivors. When it ended, Jung-min transmitted a message that reached every human force in the galaxy. "Communication array secured. All human units, you are cleared for unrestricted operations." Meanwhile, the rebellion was spreading beyond human colonies. On Zerion Prime, the native species had been displaced from their homeworld 20 years earlier when the Dominion decided their planet would make a better vacation resort for alien tourists. The Zerion people had been relocated to a barren moon and told to be grateful for Dominion generosity. They had been waiting decades for a chance to reclaim their home. When they saw humans fighting impossible odds and winning, They decided their chance had come. The Zarian assault on their former homeworld was swift and merciless. They had spent 20 years learning every detail of what the Dominion had built on their sacred ground. They knew where every weakness lay, where every target was most vulnerable. The Dominion vacation resorts burned for 3 days. When the flames died down, the Zarian flag flew over their ancestral capital once again. Similar uprisings were occurring throughout the galaxy. The Altair Federation, which had been forced into the Dominion 50 years earlier, declared independence and began attacking Dominion installations in their territory. The Rigel Commonwealth, whose trading rights had been seized by Dominion corporations, seized those corporations' assets and expelled all alien officials from their worlds. Even species that were supposedly loyal members of the Dominion began questioning their allegiance. The insect-like Zephyrians, who had been Dominion members for over a century, watched the human rebellion with growing interest. Perhaps, their queen transmitted to her military commanders, "We have been on the wrong side of history." Dr. Mu Jin monitored the collapse from her laboratory on Europa. Her computer viruses had succeeded beyond her wildest expectations. The Dominion's own technology was being used against them on a scale she had never imagined possible, but her most successful creation was not a virus. It was a simple video file that she had uploaded to every communication network in Dominion space. The file showed Kim Taeho's execution alongside footage of other Dominion atrocities that had been hidden from the public. The video was being watched by billions of beings across the galaxy. Many were seeing the true face of their government for the first time. On the Dominion world of Alpha Centauri, civilian protests began in the capital city. The local population, mostly members of species that had joined the Dominion voluntarily, were horrified by what they saw in Dr. Im's video. How many other innocent beings have died like this? They demanded to know. The protest spread to other worlds. Dominion officials found themselves facing angry crowds of their own citizens, demanding explanations for centuries of hidden crimes. Admiral Song Minho's fleet was still 2 days away from Dominion Prime, but the war was already being won by ordinary humans who had been dismissed as harmless civilians. General Vorthak, barricaded in his palace as Colonel Jungmin's forces fought through his guards, finally understood the magnitude of his mistake. The Dominion had not been governing human colonies. They had been occupying a civilization that was pretending to be conquered, while secretly preparing for war. "How many?" he asked his intelligence chief. "How many human agents have been operating in our territory?" The pale alien consulted his data files. Current estimates suggest that approximately 40% of all humans in Dominion space were actually military personnel operating under civilian cover. 40%? Vorthak's voice rose to a shriek. "You're telling me that nearly half our human population was an army in disguise?" "It appears so, sir." Vorthak looked at the tactical display one more time. The red warning lights now covered most of his empire. Entire sectors had declared independence. Alien species that had been loyal for centuries were joining the rebellion. His own citizens were demanding his removal from power. In 20 minutes, the execution of one human soldier had destroyed 300 years of Dominion rule. A message appeared on his personal communication device. It was from Admiral Song Minho, whose fleet was still approaching Dominion Prime. "General Vorthak," the message read, "you wanted to teach humanity about power. You wanted to show us our place in the cosmic order. Consider the lesson learned." Vorthak realized with growing horror that he had one final choice to make. He could surrender and face trial for his crimes, or he could fight to the end and watch his empire burn around him. Outside his palace, he could hear the sounds of Colonel Jungmin's assault team getting closer. Soon they would break through his defenses and the last symbol of Dominion authority would fall. The Star Dominion, which had ruled this sector of the galaxy for 3 centuries, had collapsed in exactly 20 minutes, all because they had made the mistake of publicly executing a human soldier and expecting his people to submit in fear. Instead, they had learned what happened when you awakened something that should have been left sleeping. 6 months later, Admiral Song Minho stood in the same plaza where Kim Taeho had died. The molecular dissolution chamber had been removed, and in its place stood a simple monument made of black stone. The inscription was written in 200 different languages, representing every species that had been freed from Dominion rule. Here died the last victim of tyranny in this sector. The monument read, "Here began the age of freedom." But it was the second inscription, written in smaller text below the first, that drew the most attention. "You have no idea what you've just awakened." The final words that Tejo had spoken to his captors, now carved in stone for all time. The plaza was filled with representatives from hundreds of worlds. Humans stood alongside Zarians, Rigelians, Altarians, and dozens of other species that had joined the rebellion. They had come to witness the signing of the Freedom Charter, the document that would replace the Star Dominion with a new form of government. Colonel Oh Jung-min stood guard nearby, wearing the same uniform he had worn during the assault on this very building. His team had captured General Vorthak alive, though the former Supreme Chancellor now awaited trial for crimes against sentient beings. The trial would be fair and open, broadcast to every world in the sector. Unlike the Dominion's show trials, this one would follow actual laws and give the accused a chance to defend himself. It was important to show the galaxy that the new order would be different from what came before. Captain Yoon Hai-jin had not lived to see this day. He had died leading the assault on Kepler Station, but his sacrifice had saved thousands of civilian lives. His name was engraved on the monument alongside Tejo's, part of a growing list of heroes who had given everything for freedom. Professor Jang So-young approached the podium to read the Freedom Charter aloud. As the chief architect of the Human Resistance Network, she had been chosen to speak for all the species that had fought together. "We, the free peoples of this sector," she began, "declare that no being shall be executed for the entertainment of others. No species shall rule over another through fear and violence. No government shall hide its crimes from the people it claims to serve." The charter was different from anything the galaxy had seen before. Instead of creating a new empire with humans in charge, it established a confederation where each species governed itself. Humans would serve as peacekeepers and mediators, but they would not be rulers. "We learned something important during the war," Admiral Minho explained to the assembled representatives. "Power corrupts everyone who holds it too long. That's why this government will have term limits, elections, and checks on authority. We will not become what we fought to destroy." The ceremony was interrupted by a disturbance near the back of the crowd. A group of young aliens, members of species that had been part of the original Dominion, were shouting protests. "Why should we trust humans?" one of them demanded. "You destroyed our government. You killed our leaders. How do we know you won't do the same to us?" The crowd tensed, but Admiral Minho raised his hand for calm. He walked down from the platform and approached the protesters directly. "You're right to be suspicious," he said quietly. "Your people were taught that humans were inferior, and our people were taught that your species were our enemies. Both sides were lied to by leaders who wanted to keep us fighting each other, instead of questioning their authority." He gestured toward the monument behind him. "Commander Tejo died because your leaders wanted to make an example of him. But his death became an example of something they never expected. It showed the galaxy that ordinary people, when pushed too far, can accomplish extraordinary things." The young alien who had spoken looked uncertain. "But what happens when you humans decide you don't need us anymore? What happens when you become like the Dominion?" "Then you do what we did," Minho replied. "You fight back. That's why we're writing these protections into law. That's why we're making sure every species has the right to defend itself. We're not asking you to trust us forever. We're asking you to trust the system we're building together." Dr. Im Yoo-jin had spent the past 6 months working on something even more ambitious than her computer viruses. She had been designing a communication network that no single government could control or censor. Every world in the Confederation would have access to uncensored information about what their leaders were doing. "Transparency," she explained to the gathered representatives, "is the enemy of tyranny. When people know the truth about their government's actions, they can make informed decisions about their future." The Freedom Charter was signed that day by representatives from 412 worlds. It established the Galactic Confederation, a loose alliance of free species committed to preventing the rise of another empire like the Star Dominion. But the real victory was not the charter itself. It was the knowledge that ordinary beings, when united by a common cause, could defeat even the most powerful tyranny. Lieutenant Colonel Bae Soo-jin, now serving as the Confederation's first director of planetary defense, had established military academies on dozens of worlds. Students from every member species learned not just tactics and strategy, but the principles that separated soldiers from conquerors. A warrior's first duty, she taught her cadets, is to protect those who cannot protect themselves. A warrior's second duty is to ensure that protection is never needed again. The memorial service for Kim Tae-ho was held 1 year after his death. Representatives from every world in the former Dominion attended, along with beings from species that had never been part of either government. Admiral Minho gave the main speech, standing before the monument that bore his friend's final words. Tae-ho died believing that his sacrifice would inspire others to fight for freedom. Minho said, he could not have imagined that his death would spark the liberation of an entire sector of the galaxy. He could not have known that his final moments would be remembered not as a defeat, but as the beginning of victory. The ceremony concluded with the reading of names, not just Tae-ho's name, but the names of every being who had died fighting for freedom. Humans and aliens alike, soldiers and civilians, all honored equally. As the sun set over the plaza, a new tradition began. Children from dozens of different species placed flowers at the base of the monument, and their parents told them the story of the human who refused to break, even when facing the worst torture imaginable. The Star Dominion had wanted to make Kim Tae-ho an example of human weakness. Instead, they had created a symbol of courage that would inspire generations to come. Years later, when other tyrants in distant parts of the galaxy threatened their own people, they would remember the lesson of Commander Kim Tae-ho. They would remember that sometimes when you push people too far, you discover what they are truly capable of. They would remember that it is dangerous to awaken something that should be left sleeping. And they would remember that even the mightiest empire can fall in 20 minutes. When ordinary people decide they have had enough, the age of freedom had begun, built on the sacrifice of one soldier who chose to die standing, rather than live kneeling. His final words had become the warning that echoed across the galaxy whenever oppressors grew too confident in their power. You have no idea what you've just awakened.